And one of the central insights I've always had working across both B2B and B2C is this, okay? I've very recently, although it harks back to my introduction to the agency when I worked as a copywriter in direct marketing, I've been very, very interested in behavioral science. And behavioral science tends to focus on what are called biases. In other words, areas where individual consumer decision-making deviates from that which is considered to be economically or conventionally rational. And what I discovered over time was that it's not quite the way you think. Individual decision-making, which is often derided as irrational, contains a lot of hidden intelligence. And institutional decision-making, which looks perfectly rational, contains a lot of hidden stupidity. And it's important to remember this, that there are perfectly rational looking things which are actually stupid, and there are things which appear stupid which are actually clever. I was talking about one example the other day, which is the fact that people will pay more in a restaurant if the menu describes the carrots as Pembrokeshire carrots or Pembrokeshire potatoes than if the menu just says with potatoes. And people go, isn't that silly? People are basically paying for an adjective. Come to think of it, I don't think that's silly at all. I think what Pembrokeshire says is that our chef buys the vegetables, not our procurement department. Because if you had the procurement department buying the potatoes or the carrots, they just buy the cheapest potatoes or carrots they could, which would be commoditized, which would have no provenance and would therefore be only allowed to be described as carrots or potatoes. If you say Pembrokeshire potatoes or locally grown, it suggests you might conceivably be bucking the trend in business and actually buying on quality rather than on price. So quite a lot of, one great phrase I was always told is never dismiss any behavior as irrational until you understand what the person is trying to do. And what the person is doing there is they're looking for clues that maybe the restaurant cares a little bit more about quality and customer satisfaction and repeat business than it does about short-term margin. And so quite a lot of what consumers do which looks silly actually isn't that silly at all. There's hidden intelligence within it. But there's a second issue as well in consumer behavior, which is the biases you get in consumer behavior, because we don't have to actually defend and present and explain our purchase decisions we make as consumers to a panel of supposed experts. The biases that do exist tend to cancel out. Yes, when people buy a car, some people are disproportionately obsessed with, for example, the seat fabric. Some people are disproportionately obsessed with the idea that it has white wall tires. We always joke that Americans are disproportionately obsessed by the number of cup holders. But if you add together all these biases, the information which then feeds back to car designers is an aggregate of different biases. Some people are more obsessed with fuel economy, some people are more obsessed with performance. And the aggregate of these different preferences actually adds up to something that kind of resembles a sensible car. What you get in business-to-business decision-making is something different, where everybody's biased in the same way. And Daniel Kahneman calls these compounding biases, which is they become worse and worse and more extreme in their effects the more people who actually are influenced by them. And one of the great biases I've noticed in any form of institutional decision making, we're talking about B2B marketing here, but this applies equally to B2G, to anything where the decision is made by a committee or an institution or by a process rather than by an individual brain, okay? You have a very simple bias that always happens, which is people really, really need their decision to make sense, okay? And what I mean is that in B2B decision making, you don't make the decision that will lead to the best outcome. You make the decision that's easiest to defend or least likely to come under attack. And it doesn't look like a bias, but it really, really is.